holding the cards, all folding. The saints we see are all made of gold.
When your dreams they fail and the ones we hail are the worst of all, and the bloods run stale.
I wanna hide the truth, I wanna shelter you, but with the beast inside, there's nowhere we can hide. No matter what we breed, we still are made of greed. This is my kingdom come, this is my kingdom come. When you feel my heat, look into my eyes, it's where my demons hide.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, grasshoppers. This is part of the, or what is about to be part of the Pink Eye series of study streams.
Zach
Woke up this morning.
said, midnight stream that's a new one.
Midnight for you. It's only 5 o'clock in the afternoon for me. I have been recovering and resting all day. I woke up this morning with a massive case of pink eye, so my eyes were crusted over, and the other day when this happened, I've been giving myself a couple, 3 days of rest. But I wake up, I clean out my eyes, and I still can't quite see clearly, which is really unfortunate. So what can you do? As it turns out, I feel rested enough at this point later in the afternoon that I'm going to give it a shot at a unique series on Informant 158.
Said, sorry to hear that. I wish you a quick recovery.
Yeah, even this morning I woke up a little late and I hadn't unlocked the tournament, so fortunately I got it off a little late, but it had a great attendance. So Informant 158. Informant 158, ladies and gentlemen, the latest informant. Now I'm not going to be using informant's comments. It is going to be a copyright-free stream. I am promoting the book, however. I don't seem to have it handy, but I did save the game into my study. I know I actually have it here, but I'm just not seeing it right in front of me. As I look for a few things, and I've been involved with a few other details. I have not made it to Society Billiards this week either, unfortunately. But what can you do? We are going to make this a good stream for the visually impaired as well. And what I do recommend is that you create your own study of personal study games, and that way you might be able to follow along. And this is the best way to study interactively, honestly. If you will open up your own study, whether you're watching any type of video or instructional, then you will be able to follow along with the video interactively. It also helps if you have a touch screen to be able to move the pieces. The other day I was playing Bullet, and my microphone, because of the touch screen, as I was vibrating the table, the microphone was shifting across in front of the camera. And I didn't even notice it while I'm fending for my life. And the sub and follower bullet challenges.
Said, does it apply to university courses too? I could really use some help there.
Absolutely. The thing in university courses there is to take intensive notes, just continually writing down keywords. Always write. Buy a notebook of any type, size, or nature, no matter how big or small it is. And just write down keywords periodically. Just keep notes all the way down the line, chronologically, with what the lecture or study is. And you will actually be a better student, because the act of writing, or the interactive nature, the tactile nature of learning, sort of helps you enjoy that and absorb that better. And I don't know where. What's this? Hold on. Who's this?
Ready?
You're not supposed to say that out loud, hon. We'll see how well that comes across on the recording. Maybe I could have muted what I should have done. So needless to say, we're going to start with the first section, or the second section of the informant, which concerns itself with the semi-open games. And the semi-open games include the E4 and anything other than E6 or E5. Now E6 is a semi-open game. It is the first part of the next volume of the next part, the C part. And here we're going to be dealing with knight F6. Interestingly enough, there are several good ways to react to this move. Only two of which I can honestly recommend, and I will let everyone consider for a moment. Now, if you're watching this video on demand, you'll be able to take a little bit longer than the 45 seconds, and I plan on cutting this even a little bit shorter to expedite the stream. But you're looking for a series of candidate moves, and ironically you want to...
Paul E. said.
Paul, good morning.
Master Chess Dojo.
It's a subscribers only stream when we do instruction, so I appreciate you being here. So in this particular position, of the several moves that you might play in this particular position, aside from the move that was played in the game, knight to c3 is extremely common, and I also wheeled out the immediate bishop to c4 once against former U.S. women's champion, I believe, Sharon Bertman. She's a women's international master, and she went into a deep think here and answered with e5. And we went into a closed, into a different type of game, maybe a Vienna game.
Said.
However, there's
here.
absolutely nothing wrong with knight takes e, queen to h5. Whoop, sorry.
For white. For
Bishop
white.
takes, yes, for white. And ideally, if you must believe it, the best response for black is king to g8, queen to d5. And white is at a disadvantage in the sense that white has given up the bishop pair, white has given up one of their valuable center pawns, and for that matter, black probably could seize an easier to play game with c5, knight c6, perhaps even the move e5, gaining time on the queen, returning even more of a pawn. I had not considered that possibility either. But I have wheeled out the move bishop to c4 on several occasions against the Alekhine. Very few Alekhine players want to venture into an opponent's home preparation because most of them have not really studied this in depth and really do have to rely on their positional skills after having obtained the bishop pair, but with their king tucked away. And by the way, this particular tactic can occur in the Sicilian as well. This particular tactic also occurs, let's just say, with and then you can go touch move, oops, wait a minute, and you try to put it back on f1 and move your knight to c3 and let them force you into this. And this one is much better, however, because you can play the move queen to h5 and be fully equal, or you can go for the same type of response, making this game a theoretical nightmare for black. g6 is not as good as king to g8 once again. You could already see that the same principles apply. The same exact principles apply. White has given up a valuable center pawn, white has given up the bishop pair, and at the same time, Black's king is displaced, and they actually have to play a very good game of chess to coordinate their pieces. Again, the move bishop c4 whenever the e4 pawn is being threatened is a possibility. It looks a little bit like a modern Jerome gambit. However, the best move, of course, is e5. And after the move knight to d5, so our game has so far continued e4, knight f6, e5, knight to d5, and we will of course grab the center, and after d6 we will continue in the modern fashion. Now we could play c4 here, we could play bishop to c4, or we could just continue rather sanely as they do in the game with knight f3. Now, of the three continuations for black in this position, bishop f5 after knight f3, g6 after knight f3, or the latest, unfortunately, the latest wrinkle for black is to avoid the main theoretical lines of bishop f5 and g6 by playing d takes e5. And to be consistent in our game here, we have a slight advantage in any one of three different cases. We could capture with the pawn, we could hassle the knight with c4, or the main line, knight takes e5. And in this particular position, black chooses to play g6. We're going to be very consistent in our piece play in the semi-open game.
F3 here.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I would play knight f3, the modern variations, 9 times out of 10. And black's best move, c6, just supporting the knight, trying to keep a good, secure center. After all, black does have a later application of using his two bishops. Now, c3 may be white's best move, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with castling first, as that will transpose. Bishop to g7, and now we again have a choice between c3 and activating a rook, which is what the normal e4 player would choose. Rook to e1, castles. We're going to get the opening out of the way. By the way, openings are only a way of setting up your pieces in order to play the game. That is all they are. Just you choosing to set up your pieces in order to play a chess game. Most people think setting up the pieces involves placing the pieces on the first ranks, the pawns on the second ranks, and then making a move. But in general, a chess game doesn't really begin until all of the pieces are activated. That means that we control the center, get all of our pieces active with a purpose, and get our king safe. Or be aware of our king safety if we choose not to castle. So after the move bishop to f5, we have a pretty solid position. Bishop to e6, we have a solid position. But black instead chooses to challenge the knight on e5, which is an equally reliable continuation, one would think. And white chooses to avoid exchanges because of the cramped nature of black's position. And this is a common element in Maroczy binds and other types of games. Now, black has several moves here that are perfectly playable. He can retreat his knight to f6 from d5. He can play knight on d7 to f6. He can also, as he does in the game, try to grab space and prevent the displacement of his knight on d5 with b5. Now white has a very difficult decision again, and I'm going to reduce this to 30 seconds as we consider candidate moves for white. Now, of course, if you can pause this, candidate moves for white. You're just going to try to throw out 3 really good moves for white, and I already have my 3. My 3 do not include the move played in the game, by the way. Nor do my 3 contain the best move. So in this particular position, if you needed to pause the video, I understand if you're watching it on demand. Perfectly playable might be a move like c3 to prevent any entrapment of the bishop, I might really consider the move a4. In fact, that's the most popularly played move in this position at the highest level. And knight on b to d2. Another move that I might consider, hoping to back up c4 with knight takes c4 and then trying to re-establish a knight on the e5 square. Depending on what black does, I might need to play c3 after a move like a5, of course. In the game, however, white played extremely creatively, yet energetically, with the move bishop to g5. And this creates a little bit of a conundrum and a problem for black as we're starting to get away from theory a little bit. Notice that neither side has moved the same piece twice without a very good reason, either because the bishop was attacked or because they wish to play a move that would control the center better, or whether they wish to avoid exchanges such as knight f3. Neither side really moved the same piece twice without a purpose, and both sides are trying to activate their pieces as fast as possible. Now, after the move knight on d7 to f6, white here does choose a move again that I would not normally play. We'll give this one to you to see what move you might consider. 3 moves for white.
Sweet dreams and flying machines and pieces on the ground. Oh, I've seen fire and I've seen rain.
We're going to cater this audience to the YouTube audience to a great extent. If you've not yet subscribed on YouTube,
Dark late. Said c4 maybe.
c4 tends to isolate our pawn on d4. If you wish to attack the center, you might want to preface it with the move a4. This is a perfectly reasonable move and perhaps one of the strongest. Remember, previous candidate moves are available to us as well. We also have the move knight e5 targeting the weakness on c6.
Hop said ne5.
Knight on b to d2, knight on b to d2, and c3 are also perfectly reasonable. In the game, white chose the rather outrageous knight. Well, I take it back. a4 would have been the correct move, but after knight on 7 to b6, white chose the rather incredible, while all of our previous candidate moves still prevail, by the way. Knight to c3 turns out to be an ideal move to pressure the center. So black continues with the threat of trapping the bishop, and we do have to consider the fact that a4 is going to cause us some serious issues. So white follows through with knight takes d5, and after knight takes d5, stopping the queenside expansion with a4. Black finally tries to get his queen active to a square that is not on the diagonal of the bishop. Now, this is a good sign that black's intention is to play queen to b6, perhaps. After all, if we were only putting our queen on c7, we wouldn't necessarily need to play the rook to e8. We could have actually played queen to c7 instead.
Okay, but what if black played nxc3 first? That looks ugly.
Well, let's take a look at that. Let's go back to move 12, knight to c3. I mean, the idea of playing knight takes c3 and b takes c3 gives us a possible pawn break. I don't know that we need to utilize it right away, but of course we can also chip away and use that extra pawn in the center later on. It doesn't seem like there's any useful way of taking advantage of this. For example, if they try to pinpoint the weakness, we have a couple of choices here, whether we play c4, a4, or queen to d2, just finishing our opening. Notice we're 2 moves ahead of the opponent in finishing our development. So the move knight to c3 is rather intriguing. I mean, it certainly shows a sign of courage that you and I might not have dark played. That much is true. So after the move a5, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, a4. Black activates the rook with a sign that they're going to be moving the queen away. Queen to d2. This also doesn't really have such a great threat of playing bishop h6 since there's no rook on f8. The bishop might retreat. However, we are just connecting our rooks, preparing against any knight incursions. Pinpointing the a5 pawn as a weakness, so the queen actually has to be guarding it twice. There's a discovery to help with the rook. So black closes the lines on the queen side, but this leaves this pawn a little bit in the lurch. After all, we might be able to pinpoint that pawn as a weakness. White goes for bishop h6 anyway, and as advertised, black avoids the exchange of his very valuable long dark squared bishop. And since black has made this useful tempo with that bishop, white now can play the e5 square, tickling the weakness on c6. So here, I believe queen to b6 is a better move than what was played in the game. In the game, black played queen to d6. I was also thinking queen to c7 might be an option. But if we are human, we can consider any one of three different moves here as white. We'll look at candidate moves for white one more time. Hopefully this will all work out. Otherwise it's cracking as it seems.
God must have spent a little more time on you, on you. God must have spent
all right.
a little more time on
and at this moment in time, we do have to consider what is going on in this position that is of a priority to us. We have to really determine if we're going to if we're going to continue to pawn storm on the king side, or centralize our rooks, or play for the c4 break. So for example, a very logical move to try to invade on the dark squares on this side of the board could be h3 with the idea of knight to
RC1 in
G4.
anticipation of opening the file maybe and pressuring c6.
Rook on a to c1 is definitely one of the top three moves in the position, along with rook on a to d1. But h3 and bishop to f4 are a little bit more productive uses of our time, because we might want to get this knight into the game on that side of the board, and we also get to pinpoint the queen as a weakness.
I thought about a knight sack on f7, but I couldn't make it work.
That's fascinating. In this particular position, the rules for sacrificing are that you have to have two additional pieces as attackers than the opponent has defenders. So I did not register that as an actual move, since at best we only have one more attacker, since this bishop can't really get anything done on that diagonal. It's true that the knight is pinned, so we would be able to play queen to f4 check, but I really don't see anything happening there. We have no way of removing the defender of the d5 knight either. So black put his queen on d6, and at this moment, white aggressively attacks black's queen, and black ignores it with bishop to e6.
Esrin said, "That's a really cool rule. I never heard that before."
It is actually a rule that I learned from Yasser Seirawan decades upon decades ago in his early Microsoft Press series on winning chess. He produced a series of 5 books on winning chess for Microsoft Press. Shortly after one of his U.S. championship wins in the 1980s, since he lived in the state of Washington, it was a logical thing. So even here, we could like to entertain the move of knight takes g6, thinking that we're defending our bishop, but unfortunately...
Oh cool, I have access to those books.
Yeah, absolutely, Ezrin. I'm trying to think of which one it would have been in. I think it was... all 5 of them. One of them is winning endgames, winning... Anyway, winning. It's 5 winning series. Maybe you might remind me of what they are. So, White chooses to secure his bishop against knight takes f4. And after bishop takes e5, rook takes e5, we set ourselves up even further. And now, of course, I would like to test the water here for everyone as we look at candidate moves for White. This is a subscriber-only chat, but you can chat on the YouTube channel if you're not a subscriber, but I would prefer that you subscribe on YouTube. You may subscribe and chat on YouTube much less expensively than on Twitch.
Eslin said, it's probably tactics or strategies.
Winning chess tactics, yes. Or strategies. One of those two. Exactly. So I'm hoping that everyone here had included the move.
Eslin said, or maybe brilliancies.
No, it was in the winning chess tactics or in the winning chess strategies. I think the rule was in there. Rook on A to E1 is the most logical move. Don't leave your worst place out of the game. Where? Or is it which? Which are the best and worst placed pieces? Where are the weaknesses? If our opponent has a well-placed piece, we might be able to displace it. If we have a worse-placed piece, we can definitely improve it.
E said, I've read Winning Chess Tactics. I think Jeremy Silman was the co-author.
He might have been the co-author in a revised edition. He could have also been a quiet author. But usually those books were done by John Donaldson and the team of Inside Chess to a certain extent. So now Black actually makes a move that's a little bit ridiculous, honestly. Personally, relocating the bishop and reinforcing the knight might be of a safer nature. However, after the move knight to c7, I have to give that one a little bit of a dubious. Whoops. Hold on. I didn't want to comment on the move. Sorry about that. So basically, after rook on A to E1, knight to C7, ouch! I wanted to give that one a little bit of a dubious mark. Not a question mark, but a dubious mark. There we go. A little bit of a dubious mark. So we unfortunately blundered and showed White's next move, which is an exchange sacrifice. And we can already see that it's exceptionally difficult to see that type of exchange sacrifice. We might redo this video because I really want to quiz on that move better. And we occupy the dark squares and we're ready to come in on this square. By the way, when we were back here on the move rook on A to E1, one of our candidate moves should have been queen to H6 with the idea of the exchange sacrifice and placing the bishop on the dark square. So here it is. Knight to D7, rook takes E6, knight takes E6, bishop to E6, and you can already see that black is in a little bit of a problem. So knight to G7. We're going to follow up on all of our ideas here. as we have a couple of moves that could be good for white. Candidate moves for white. Remember, when you're looking for candidate moves, the moral of the story is like sifting for gold in the California gold rush of the late 1800s. You want to just scoop up as many moves as you can that are good and just sift and sort through them and get all the soot off of them and only analyze the best of those moves, those candidate moves, to determine which one is a better move, only a good move, perhaps the best move will appear to you. So it is very clear in this position that we can start invading on the dark squares with perhaps a rook lift, rook to e3 and rook to h3, queen to f4.
Said, the sifting process takes time.
The sifting process does take time, but it's also something that you can...
QH6 QF4 BX F7 resign.
Indeed. That is absolutely the case with your candidate moves. Bishop takes f7 I don't think was a valid move just yet, as I mentioned that we do need to be able to attack a little bit better. However, after the move queen to h6, knight to f5, black is forcing our hand. The move knight f5 challenging our queen. Ezra, you are strong, sir. How did this video take longer than 30 minutes? That's what I want to know. I guess the video should be about as long as the number of moves in the game. If you didn't find the move, which was bishop takes f7 check to put our opponent away, this is a good time to find it now, as black's moves are forced. King takes f7, queen takes h7 check, and it would have been in black's best interest.
Is there a tactic that begins with bxf7?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a tactic that begins with bxf7?
He certainly should have at least tried to barnacle with the move king f8. I don't necessarily see such an immediate way in other than g4. Could we do a rook lift? Perhaps queen takes g6? All of these moves look really good. I'm not entirely sure which is better between which pawn to g4 or queen takes g6 followed by rook to e4, rook to f4, or rook to g4. In any event, what black did instead was to play his king to f7. And we already know what's going to happen now. After all, we just have to choose the order of moves. What is the best way to proceed? There are a couple of moves that are different in this position.
I would take on g6.
In this position or in the king f8 position, I think I would have taken on g6 as well. But it is certain that if we played g4 in that, in the king f8 position, if we played g4, we're getting our piece back. We're definitely getting our piece back because they don't have any good answer to queen g7. The knight can't move. So if you've not already paused the video in this particular case,
QXG6D5.
I was wondering how many would get this move. I think any dark squared bishop move along the diagonal is good. So for example, bishop to c7 check, bishop to g3 check, both of those moves seem very, very good. The player in the game chose bishop to f4 check, and black made every effort to try to hold back with king to f6. After all, it's very easy to see that king to d5 might get mated. Now he didn't play this move, but it looks very, very scary. We have rook e5 check, queen takes g6, and the knight still can't move because queen to d3 looks like mate, right? It's just a very tragic game for black. Needless to say,
Eslin said, qf7 looks strong after kd5.
yeah, queen takes f7 check has the most promising prospects, but the king might be able to get away. King takes d4 and then the king tries to escape. Tough call. But we do have rook to d1 check and rook takes d7, so that's probably the easiest. Exactly. So if the king went to d5, queen f7 check, king takes d4, rook to d1 check, and just take the queen. That should win easily enough. So he chose bishop to f6, and now white threatened checkmate in one move with the move h4, forcing black to choose some way to give his king some squares. He chose, unfortunately, the move knight to d6, allowing a very quick checkmate. But white didn't find it. Candidate moves for white. This is from Chess Informant 158. If you wish to see this and more games with their notes included, I'm not giving the informant commentary, as that is part of the purchase price of the book. However, they do choose the best of the best games from the previous 3 to 4 month period. So if you haven't paused the video, this is a good time to determine that the fastest checkmating pattern in this position can be found with the move rook to e5. And there doesn't seem to be any way out.
bg5, b5, h5.
After all, we're threatening to win with a pawn checkmate after. Yeah. Now the author of the game
said,
instead of rook
I missed
e5,
I missed re5.
rook e5, yeah, just keeping the pawn from moving to that square. After all, the king and the pawn and the e7 square are not available. The only square really available is e6 if they get e5 in. So, as it turns out, white chose a longer continuation, but only really by one move, with the move bishop to g5.
Holly E. said, I'm feeling stupid today, I blew a winning endgame.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I blow winning endgames every day. However, while rook e5 is a longer checkmate, we have the option of playing for the pawn checkmate now, and there's hardly anything that black can do to prevent it. He can once again try e5, and this is what white was hoping to avoid. However, instead of the move f3, white chose the move rook to e5 check. Everything is forced.
Said,
king to g4,
you
f3 check.
You play blitz and bullet, I was playing 30-0.
Yeah, but still you're playing with 0 increment. That means that you have no time to think. You might as well be playing 5-0. When you play with 0 increment, it really doesn't matter whether you're playing 3-0, 5-0, 10-0, 15-0. It's all zeroed out by the fact that when you get down to 5 minutes, you're playing blitz. And you will use 10 minutes of your 15 minutes, or 25 minutes of your 30 minutes. I heard the same argument from many chess coaches who didn't want their students to play any time control shorter than 60 minutes. So they play a 2-hour time control, and then I ask, what are you going to do when your clock time goes under 60 minutes. Is that it? Do you just put us on the score sheet illegally and start blitzing out your moves because you're under 60 minutes? Doesn't make any sense at all. So in this particular instance, we still have a forced mate with the move bishop f4 check, queen to h6 check, queen to g5 check, and queen takes g4. Now I don't necessarily know that we have time to redo this video if it doesn't come off on YouTube properly. That is my main pretense. But basically, Mamedov 2640 versus Mamedov-Pruijssers 2540. The rating sure held up, as it turns out.
Dark Blade
said, I would have thought of QG4 BF4 G3 instead. This is cleaner though.
I could see that. In any event, I want to thank you all for being here, and I might try to get off one more of these short streams, or if this video doesn't come off, I may redo this one in just a few minutes. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to raid Diana Mirza. Just now. Either I'm able to get back or I'm not.
Dark Blade
said, good night then, Sensei.
Dark Blade, yes, I know it's very late
How
for
is
you in
he?
Europe.
Said,
It is now a 1 a.m. stream, I think, for you. Closing on 1 a.m. stream for you. But in any event, thank you all for being here. Subscribe on the YouTube for participating in the commentary. And it will be of great help. I can't tell you how much help it is that you subscribe on YouTube and do the commentary for non-subscribers on YouTube. Cheers and ciao, everyone. Thank you so much.